I want everyone here to know the truth about Sophia. Marcus's voice cut through the elegant rehearsal dinner like a knife. 75 guests, my family, his family, our closest friends, turned to stare as my fiancé stood up, wineglass in hand, at what was supposed to be our celebration. The wedding tomorrow is cancelled. I can't marry someone who's been lying to all of us. My name is Sophia Chen. I'm 28 years old, and 18 hours before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, my fiancé just accused me of something I didn't do, in front of everyone we know. But here's what he didn't know. I had his laptop in my purse, and I'd already seen everything. 6 days before that rehearsal dinner, 6 days before my entire world was supposed to change forever. Marcus Reynolds and I had been together for 3.5 years. We met at a tech conference in Seattle, where I was presenting my UX design portfolio. And he was the keynote speaker, a rising star in venture capital, at just 29 years old. Confident, articulate, the kind of man who made you feel like the only person in the room when he looked at you. Our first date lasted 7 hours. Coffee turned into lunch, lunch into a walk by the waterfront. And by the time the sun was setting, I was already imagining what our future might look like. Looking back now, I can see the red flags I ignored. But when you're falling in love, or what you think is love, you paint over the cracks with hope. 3 months in, Marcus started adjusting me. That's the only way I can describe it. Babe, that dress is great, but maybe something more classic for dinner with my partners. I love your friends, but they're a little intense. Maybe we skip game night this week. Your design work is amazing, but have you thought about the financial stability of staying at a startup? My firm is looking for a brand consultant. Each request seemed reasonable in isolation. He wasn't controlling, he was helping me optimize, become the best version of myself. At least, that's what I told myself. By year 2, I'd changed jobs, changed my wardrobe, changed my Friday night plans from art gallery openings with my college friends to networking dinners with his colleagues' wives. I told myself this was growth. This was what happens when you mature in a relationship. My best friend Zara saw it differently. Soph, when's the last time you painted? She asked me over coffee 6 months ago. You used to spend every Sunday at your easel. I couldn't remember. The art supplies were still in my closet, but Marcus's home office had expanded into what used to be my creative space. He needed it for video calls with international clients. I've been busy with wedding planning, I said, which wasn't untrue. Marcus had specific visions for our wedding, a specific venue, the luxury resort where his parents had renewed their vows, a specific color palette, champagne and ivory, sophisticated, not whimsical, a specific guest list that prioritized his professional network. When I suggested inviting my former roommates from design school, he'd frowned. Do they really fit with the image we're presenting? This wedding is important for my career, Sophia. The partners are coming. We need to make the right impression. The right impression. I'd heard that phrase so many times, it had become a lens through which I viewed every decision. Marcus proposed exactly 2 years into our relationship at a charity gala his firm was sponsoring. He'd arranged for the event photographer to capture the moment, for the DJ to play our song, which he'd chosen, and for the room of 200 strangers to applaud as I said yes. It was perfect, objectively perfect. So why did I feel like I was watching it happen to someone else? The engagement period was a masterclass in subtle control. Marcus insisted on a year-long engagement. Time to plan properly. He hired a wedding planner, his mother's friend, who somehow always sided with his preferences. The dress I loved was too bohemian. The venue I suggested was not prestigious enough. The intimate ceremony I dreamed of became a 200-person production. This is our day, he'd say, then immediately make a decision that was really his day. But I was committed. I'd invested 3 years. I'd changed my entire life to fit into his. The wedding was in 6 days. The deposits were non-refundable. My parents had flown in from Taiwan, and then, 5 days before the wedding, I found the folder. Marcus had asked me to grab his laptop from his car while he was on a conference call. He needed a document for a meeting. I'd grabbed it, opened it to find the file, and that's when I saw a folder on his desktop labeled S Project. S Project. My name starts with S. I should have closed it. I should have respected his privacy. But something in my gut, that same gut I'd been ignoring for 3 years, told me to click. Inside were documents, dozens of them. Spreadsheets, messages, photos, and a Word document titled Timeline. I opened it. What I read made my blood run cold. The document was a timeline. But not a wedding timeline. A manipulation timeline. Month 3. Isolate from college friends. Strategy. Suggest their immature bad influence. Month 6. Begin wardrobe modification. Method. Compliments for appropriate clothing. Subtle criticism for personal style. Month 9. Career redirection. Goal. Move her from startup to stable corporate role. More controllable schedule. Less creative autonomy. Month 12. Introduce to network wives. Purpose. Provide acceptable friend group within my professional circle. I sat there in his car, laptop screen glowing, reading my relationship like it was a business plan. Because to Marcus, that's exactly what it was. There was more. So much more. A spreadsheet tracking my compliance rate, percentage of times I agreed with his suggestions versus pushed back. The number had started at 62% in month 1 and climbed to 94% by month 36. He'd been testing me, training me. There were screenshots of text conversations with his friends, Marcus to someone named Derek. The isolation phase is complete. She barely sees her old friends anymore. Wedding planning is the perfect excuse to finalize the transition. Derek's response, "You're a genius, man. Once you're married, you've got total control, just like we discussed." Marcus, exactly. The wedding is the ultimate leverage point. After the public commitment, the social pressure will keep her locked in even if she starts questioning things. I felt nauseous. This wasn't love. This had never been love. I kept reading, my hands shaking. There was a section titled Post-Wedding Control Mechanisms. Suggest starting a family within first year, maximum vulnerability period. Encourage voluntary departure from workforce after pregnancy. Consolidate finances under joint account with me as primary manager. Relocate to suburb near my parents, further from her support system. Every major life decision he'd been suggesting was here. Mapped out like a military campaign. But the worst part, the part that made me physically sick, was the affair. Hidden in a subfolder were hundreds of messages between Marcus and a woman named Amanda. The timestamps went back 18 months. 18 months of, I can't wait until this wedding charade is over, and playing the perfect fiancé is exhausting, but necessary for my image. And once we're married and I've secured the partnership, I can start transitioning out. He was planning to marry me for appearances while continuing an affair with someone else. Amanda knew about me. She knew about the wedding. And she was fine with it because Marcus had promised her that I was just for show, that the marriage was a professional necessity, and that he'd eventually orchestrate a divorce once his career was secure enough to handle it. I was a resume line, a respectable wife to present to his conservative partners while he lived his real life elsewhere. I sat in that car for 45 minutes, reading everything. By the time I closed the laptop, I wasn't the same person who had opened it. I was angry. I was humiliated. But more than that, I was clear. For the first time in 3 years, I saw Marcus Reynolds exactly as he was, and I saw myself, the version I'd allowed him to create, with equal clarity. The question wasn't whether to call off the wedding. That decision had been made the moment I opened that folder. The question was how, because Marcus had planned every moment of our relationship for maximum public impression. He'd orchestrated everything to make himself look good, to maintain his image, to control the narrative. And tomorrow night was the rehearsal dinner. 75 guests, both families, his entire professional network. A thought formed in my mind. Dangerous, satisfying, absolutely necessary. If Marcus wanted a performance, I'd give him one, but I'd be writing the script this time. I spent the next 24 hours preparing. First, I made copies of everything. Every document, every message, every spreadsheet. I uploaded them to a secure cloud drive, emailed them to myself, and saved them to 2 USB drives that I gave to Zara for safekeeping. "What is this?" she asked when I showed up at her apartment at midnight. "Insurance," I said, "and evidence. Don't open them unless something happens to me." Her eyes widened. "Sophia, what's going on?" "I'll tell you tomorrow night. Just, trust me. And be ready." Next, I called my parents. This was the hardest part. "Mom, Dad, I need you to trust me tomorrow night at the rehearsal dinner. Whatever happens, whatever I say, I need you to stay calm and let me handle it." My mother's voice was tight with concern. "Sophia, what's wrong? Is it Marcus? It's complicated, but I promise you'll understand tomorrow. Just trust me. Please." There was a long pause. Then my father spoke, his English careful and deliberate. "We trust you, daughter. We have always trusted you." Then I made one more call. To the wedding planner. "Diane, I need to make a change to the rehearsal dinner program." "Sophia, we're less than 24 hours out. What kind of change?" "I want to add a toast. From me. After Marcus's welcome speech, but before dinner." "That's unusual. The bride doesn't typically give a formal toast at the rehearsal dinner. Consider it unusual then. Can you make it happen?" She sighed. "I'll add it to the program." The rehearsal dinner was at the resort's waterfront pavilion. Sunset views, string lights, flowers everywhere. It should have been magical. I wore the dress Marcus had chosen. Ivory silk, elegant, appropriate. I smiled at his parents. I hugged my bridesmaids. I played my part perfectly. Because I'd been trained well. Marcus looked confident as he stood to give his welcome speech. He thanked everyone for coming, told charming anecdotes about our relationship, painted a picture of our future together that bore no resemblance to the document I'd read on his laptop. Everyone laughed at his jokes. His mother dabbed her eyes. His father nodded approvingly. Then Diane, the wedding planner, announced, "And now, a few words from our beautiful bride, Sophia." Marcus's face flickered with surprise. This wasn't in the program he'd approved. But he recovered quickly, smiling as I stood up. I pulled out my phone, not to read notes, but to pull up the screenshots I'd prepared. "Thank you all for being here," I began, my voice steady. "I want to share something with you tonight. Something about love, trust, and knowing your worth." The pavilion was silent, except for the sound of waves and the soft music playing in the background. 75 pairs of eyes were on me. Marcus was still standing, his smile frozen, confusion starting to creep into his eyes. "When Marcus proposed 2 years ago," I continued, "he told me he wanted to build a life together. He talked about partnership, respect, and genuine connection." I believed him. I glanced at his parents. His mother was smiling encouragingly. She had no idea what was coming. But over the past few days, I've learned something important. I've learned the difference between the story we tell about our relationships and the truth of what they actually are. Marcus's smile was fading. "Sophia, what are you—" "I'm getting to that," I said calmly, holding up my hand. "See, yesterday I made a discovery. Marcus had asked me to get his laptop from his car, and I found something interesting, a folder called S Project." The color drained from Marcus's face. At first, I thought maybe it was a surprise for me, a wedding surprise. But what I found was different. I turned on the pavilion's projection screen, the one set up for displaying our engagement photos during dinner, and connected my phone. "This," I said, as the first document appeared on screen, "is a timeline. Marcus created it, Let me read you some highlights. The text was large enough for everyone to read. Month 3, isolate from college friends. Strategy, suggest they're immature, bad influence. Month 6, begin wardrobe modification. Month 12, introduce to network wives. Purpose, provide acceptable friend group within my professional circle. The pavilion erupted. Gasps, murmurs, chairs scraping. Sophia, that's taken out of context, Marcus started, but his voice was drowned out. Is it? I asked. Let me provide more context then. I swiped to the next image, the spreadsheet tracking my compliance rate. Marcus's mother stood up. Marcus, what is this? Mom, she's twisting. I'm not twisting anything, I said, my voice louder now, stronger. I'm showing people exactly what you wrote, in your own words. I swiped again. The messages between Marcus and Derek appeared. Marcus, the isolation phase is complete. She barely sees her old friends anymore. Derek, once you're married, you've got total control. Marcus, the wedding is the ultimate leverage point. After the public commitment, the social pressure will keep her locked in. My father stood up from his table, his face hard. Several of my relatives were speaking rapid Mandarin. Marcus's colleagues were exchanging shocked looks. You planned this, I said, turning to face Marcus directly. You planned every step of our relationship like it was a business acquisition. You isolated me from my friends. You changed how I dressed, where I worked, who I spent time with. You turned me into someone I didn't recognize because that person was easier for you to control. Sophia, please. Marcus was pale now, his confident facade crumbling. I'm not finished, I said, because there's more. I swiped to the messages with Amanda. The affair. Laid out in explicit detail for everyone to see. Marcus to Amanda. I can't wait until this wedding charade is over. Amanda to Marcus. Playing the devoted fiancé must be exhausting. Marcus to Amanda. Once we're married and I've secured the partnership, I can start planning the exit strategy. Marcus's mother made a sound like she'd been struck. His father's face turned crimson. The pavilion exploded into chaos. You were cheating, someone shouted. The whole relationship was fake. He documented everything. Marcus was trying to speak, but no one was listening to him anymore. His carefully constructed image was disintegrating in real time. I turned back to the crowd, my voice cutting through the noise. I found all of this yesterday, and I had a choice. I could call off the wedding quietly, let Marcus spin whatever story he wanted, let him maintain his reputation while I dealt with the private heartbreak, or I paused, meeting the eyes of various guests. Or I could make sure everyone knew the truth, not my version, not my interpretation, his actual words, his actual plan, his actual character. I looked at Marcus, who was standing frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. So here's what's going to happen, I said. Tomorrow's wedding is cancelled. The vendors have been notified. The venue has been released. If you've traveled here, I apologize for the inconvenience, but I will not be marrying a man who viewed our relationship as a manipulation project. I pulled off the engagement ring, the one he'd chosen, from the jeweler his mother recommended, in the style his ex-girlfriend had liked, and set it on the table in front of him. I want everyone here to know something, I continued. For 3 years, I thought I was the problem. I thought I wasn't good enough, wasn't polished enough, wasn't fitting in well enough. I changed everything about myself, trying to be the woman Marcus wanted. My voice cracked slightly, but I pushed through. But the problem was never me. The problem was that Marcus didn't want a partner. He wanted a project, an acquisition, a controllable asset that made him look good to his colleagues and his family. I turned to his parents. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, I'm sorry you're learning about your son this way, but you raised a man who views relationships as transactions and women as things to be managed. That's not the kind of person I can marry. Then I looked at my own parents, who were standing now, my mother's hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry I put you through this. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner, but I see it now. I picked up my purse and turned back to face the crowd one last time. To everyone who came here to celebrate what you thought was a love story, thank you. Your presence means something to me, even if the wedding doesn't. But this isn't a love story. It never was. It was a very patient, very calculated manipulation, and I refused to spend the rest of my life as someone's project. I started walking toward the exit, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Behind me, chaos erupted again. I could hear Marcus trying to defend himself, his voice rising desperately. I could hear his mother crying, his father demanding answers. I could hear my bridesmaids scrambling to follow me, but I didn't look back. Zara caught up with me in the parking lot. Holy shit, Sophia. Holy shit. I turned to her, and for the first time since finding that folder, I smiled. Really smiled. I know. You just publicly destroyed him. You eviscerated his reputation in front of everyone he's ever tried to impress. I showed people who he actually is, I corrected. He destroyed himself. I just provided the evidence. She pulled me into a fierce hug. I'm so fucking proud of you. The Sophia I knew in college just came roaring back. The video of my speech went viral within 12 hours. Someone at the rehearsal dinner, I never found out who, had been recording on their phone. By the next morning, clips were all over TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. At rehearsal dinner, revenge was trending. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. This is how you handle a narcissist. The way she had receipts for everything. That man really documented his own manipulation tactics. The hubris. Her parents must be so proud. But the viral video wasn't what mattered to me. What mattered was what happened in the days and weeks after. Marcus's firm quietly asked him to resign. Apparently, several female employees came forward after seeing the video, sharing their own experiences of his management style. The pattern of control and manipulation extended beyond romantic relationships. His partnership offer was revoked. Amanda, the affair partner, released a statement saying she'd been manipulated too, that Marcus had told her I was in on it, that our engagement was an arrangement for family appearances. I didn't believe her entirely, but I also didn't care enough to pursue it. Marcus tried to salvage his reputation with a public apology that his PR team clearly wrote, I made serious mistakes in my relationship with Sophia. I handled things poorly and hurt someone I cared about. I'm seeking therapy and working on becoming a better person. The internet wasn't buying it, but more important than Marcus's downfall was what happened to me. The morning after the rehearsal dinner, I woke up in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house. They'd insisted I come stay with them rather than return to the apartment I'd shared with Marcus. My mother brought me tea and sat on the edge of my bed. Why didn't you tell us? She asked softly. About what he was doing? Because I didn't see it, Mom. Or I did see it but convinced myself it was normal, that I was being too sensitive, that compromise looked like erasing myself. She took my hand. You know what your grandmother used to say? A man who truly loves you wants to see you bloom, not wilt. I started crying then, really crying, for the first time since finding that folder. I wilted so much, Mom, I don't even know who I am anymore. Then we'll figure it out together, she said. The real you is still there. Just needs space to grow back. Over the next few weeks, I started the process of reclaiming my life. I moved out of the apartment Marcus and I had shared, found a small studio in the arts district. The neighborhood he'd always said was too bohemian. I reconnected with my college friends. We had a reverse bachelorette party where they helped me unpack boxes and painted my new apartment walls a bold teal color. Marcus would have hated it. I loved it. I set up my easel again. The first thing I painted was abstract. Angry reds and oranges bleeding into softer purples and blues. Chaos resolving into peace. My art professor from college saw it on my Instagram and asked if I'd be interested in showing at a group exhibition. I quit my corporate brand consultant job and returned to UX design, but this time freelance. Working with startups, nonprofits, Companies doing interesting work rather than just profitable work. Slowly, the Sophia I'd been before Marcus started re-emerging. But she was different now, stronger, more careful, more aware of her own boundaries. Zara and I were having coffee about 2 months after the rehearsal dinner when she asked, "Do you regret the way you did it? Publicly, I mean." I thought about it carefully. Part of me wishes I could have handled it privately, I admitted. That I could have just walked away without the drama. But Marcus had spent 3 years controlling the narrative of our relationship. He'd isolated me, changed me, and set up the wedding as the ultimate leverage point. If I'd called it off quietly, he would have spun a story that painted me as unstable or ungrateful. And this way, people saw the truth. Not my interpretation, his own documented words. I didn't have to convince anyone of what he was. He'd already shown them himself. Do you think he learned anything? I shook my head. Honestly, probably not. People like Marcus don't usually develop sudden self-awareness, but that's not my problem anymore. He's not my problem anymore. How does that feel? I took a sip of my coffee. The fancy oat milk latte Marcus used to say was overpriced and unnecessary, and smiled. It feels like freedom. The thing about public revenge is that people expect you to be bitter afterward. They expect the anger to consume you, the vindication to be your primary emotion. But what I actually felt was relief. Relief that I'd seen the truth before marrying him. Relief that I'd found the courage to walk away. Relief that the version of myself I'd been becoming, small, controlled, apologetic, wasn't permanent. I started getting messages from strangers, women mostly, sharing their own stories of manipulative relationships, of men who isolated them or changed them or made them feel crazy for trusting their instincts. Your speech gave me courage to leave. I was planning my own wedding when I saw your video. It made me re-examine things. We're in couples therapy now, and he's finally admitting to behaviors I thought I was imagining. My daughter showed me your video. It made me realize what I've been accepting for 20 years isn't normal. Those messages meant more than any viral video count could. Because the real story wasn't about revenge, it was about recognition, recognizing manipulation, recognizing your own worth, recognizing when love has become something else entirely. 1 year after the rehearsal dinner that never led to a wedding, I was at a gallery opening, my opening, 20 pieces exploring themes of identity, transformation, and reclamation. The exhibition was called Bloom in honor of my grandmother's words. My parents were there, Zara and my college friends, former colleagues who'd watched me change during my relationship with Marcus and were relieved to see me return to myself. As I stood in front of my favorite piece, a self-portrait where my face was assembled from broken mirror fragments, reflecting different versions of myself finally coming back together, someone approached. Sophia Chen. I turned to see a woman about my age, professional, confident. I'm director of UX for a tech nonprofit. We're working on platforms to help domestic violence survivors. I saw your work online and wondered if you might be interested in consulting. What made you think of me? She smiled slightly. I saw your rehearsal dinner video last year, the way you documented everything, presented evidence, controlled the narrative. It showed a level of strategic thinking we need. Plus, you understand manipulation tactics firsthand. I took her card. I'm interested by I said. Because that was the thing about surviving Marcus. It hadn't just taught me what to avoid. It had taught me how to recognize the patterns, how to trust my instincts, how to help others see what I'd missed. Marcus had tried to make me smaller. Instead, he'd accidentally shown me how strong I actually was. As I drove home that night, I passed the resort where the rehearsal dinner had happened. The place where, exactly 1 year ago, I'd stood in front of 75 people and reclaimed my own story. I didn't slow down to look at it. I was too busy moving forward. So that's my story. The rehearsal dinner that ended a wedding before it started. The relationship that taught me the difference between compromise and erasure. The public confrontation that freed me from a private prison. People ask if I'd do it differently. if I regret the public nature of it all. The truth is, I wish I'd never needed to. I wish I'd seen who Marcus was sooner. I wish I'd trusted my instincts instead of doubting them. But I don't regret how I ended it, because sometimes the only way to escape a narrative someone else is writing is to grab the pen and write your own ending. My name is Sophia Chen. I'm 29 now. I'm a freelance UX designer. I paint. I have coffee with friends whenever I want. I wear colors that Marcus would have called too bold. And I've never been happier. If you're in a relationship that makes you feel smaller instead of stronger, trust that feeling. If someone is slowly changing who you are under the guise of improvement, that's not love. Love doesn't require you to disappear. Love helps you bloom.